All right. Trump wants the Commanders Stadium to bear his name. Let's get into it. This is from CBS. The White House said Saturday. This is an article from a few days ago. Just so you know, by the way, we don't always get every single show or every single segment on every single show as we come across it. Sometimes we have to prioritize different things. We have to move things around. So this is from a few days ago, but I think it still stands up. Okay, CBS. The White House said Saturday it would be beautiful to name the new stadium for Washington's NFL team after President Trump, following an ESPN report that an intermediary has told the Commanders ownership group that he wants it to bear his name. Quote, that would surely be a beautiful name, as it was President Trump who made the rebuilding of the new stadium possible, unquote, said Caroline Leavitt, press secretary for the Republican president. A spokesperson for the Washington Commanders told the Associated Press in a text message that the team had no comment on the report. The office of the city's mayor, Democrat Muriel Bowser, declined to comment. Under a deal announced in April between the team and the District of Columbia, the team will return to the nation's capital in a new stadium expected to cost nearly $4 billion. It will be built on the site of the RFK Stadium, where the team played for more than 3 decades when it won 3 Super Bowls in the 1980s and 1990s. The team moved to Landover in 1997. In July, Mr. Trump threatened to hold up the deal by insisting that the team change its name from the Commanders back to the old name. I want to leave that name dead. A name that was considered offensive to Native Americans. Despite the threat, the city council and the team were able to reach the framework of a deal a few days later. Donald Trump, of course, he likes to see his name on buildings. He's a developer, real estate guy. It kind of feels like it's in his wheelhouse. This still feels like bully energy. He has, I forget who it was, but maybe you can help me out, Q. There was a person that made a case that Donald Trump has been on this path since he was refused an ownership stake in, I believe it might have been the Buffalo Bills football team that he wanted to purchase maybe in the 90s or in the 80s or something like that. And he's been angry ever since. Someone made a case for this. I'm sure you might know. And if not, I promise it's somebody much smarter about sports than me. But Donald Trump has been fascinated with football and wanting to have a role in the football world, I guess. So first off, it's super gross that he wants the Commanders to change their name back to their old name. I've heard Native groups that have advocated for teams to stop naming themselves after Native American tribes and, what would the words be, like slurs and that sort of stuff. These Native American advocates have said things like, how can my people be taken seriously if all they know of us is a racist caricature of who we are? Right. And, when you hear these activists, these passionate activists describe their plight in ensuring that their tribes and their ancestors are presented to the world in a positive light, in a light that they determine is appropriate for themselves and for their ancestry, you kind of feel like, yeah, they should probably not name the football team after that. I don't know why people who have so much want to take so much more from people who have so little left. It's a really awful thing to witness. I don't want to talk up this whole time, but we can go back and forth if you want. But Q, I want to make sure you have a long runway here to talk about this story.
It's interesting that Trump and those of his ilk will follow behind those same activists, like they didn't say anything, and tell you how much they love it. They love the name of the old team. I talked to many of them, and they all told me they loved it.
Never heard that.
These are things that he's actually said, knowing He'd never heard such a thing. I had to censor myself just then.
Yeah.
Someone representing him saying that he was responsible for the team being able to build. It's not just misleading, it's untrue.
That's Joe Biden, right?
Well, there's so many factors, none of them being
Had to do
Donald
with
Trump.
him. Okay. All right.
That's not even something that you would attribute to a president. It's Washington, D.C. is where the president's house is. He makes laws and legislation for the nation. Washington, D.C. has its own legislators. It has its own mayor. It has its own, city council. It has its own people that make and run that city.
Mm-hmm.
And the billionaires that own that team and the taxpayers in and around that city have a lot more to do with them building a new stadium than the president. He even threatened if they didn't change their name back to stop them from being able to build the stadium that they seem to be building anyway. So this just shows that most of his threats are baseless and empty, but people cower and bend the knee so readily, we never even get to see it challenged. So it's a running joke that his villain story did start when he was denied the ability to purchase a professional team.
Okay.
So that is not something that Rams has made up. I say joked because, of course, he was already an awful person by that point.
Yeah.
Right. But it is his villain arc starting when he was denied entry into the good old boys club when he was, some say, masquerading as a rich person in rooms full of actual rich people. And just because of, his personality, we've all seen it on display. You can see why in a lot of rooms he wasn't welcomed. And now he's in a position to flex his power and his muscle on the people who once told him he wasn't good enough and that he didn't belong. And Rams, as you said it plainly, it's bully energy. An insecure, small man who has power now to rule over, take from, bully, dominate, oppress, hunt, and even unalive people just because he doesn't like them. To take away from people who already have so little. To make life more difficult for people who are already struggling. And him and his people not only cheer it on, they not only celebrate it, but they flaunt their opulence. In the midst of denying healthcare and food to hungry, sick, starving Americans, they spend tens of millions of dollars on opulent parties where they eat and drink all they can, they stuff themselves. This is the president of the United States, and tens of millions of people celebrate him and worship him. Is a really, really sick thing to sit here and realize as I'm saying it. I've been kind of void of this feeling for a couple of days, and it just all washed over me again, man. This is a really awful time that we're living in.
Well, I want to remind you of something that I think is really cool. So Donald Trump went to a football game for the Washington Commanders.
This team in this same city that this story is taking place.
Yeah. And the crowd booed him really loudly, which, when the crowd lets Donald Trump know how they feel, I'm sure that's got to get to him. So that's not nothing. And then, for what it's worth, the Commanders lost that game to the Detroit Lions, 44-22. Yeah, I thought you'd get a kick out of that because, Detroit. So, yeah, man. Again, none of this is normal. This is the president. I grew up thinking the president was the person who served the people of the United States of America. And we honored the president. We chose to honor the presidents after they had served us. And Donald Trump, obviously, seeking to serve himself. And this is another story that tells that truth louder than any that I could make up. So